This time for the latest Regis Talks About Things, we're going to talk about missed opportunity Hearthstone cards. In other words, cards that are about to rotate out of standard formats, but never really got their time to shine. So specifically, cool legendaries like Archwitch Willow. Archwitch Willow. Or like build around cards that had a cool theme that never really got fully explored in the game. Like we never got a chance to make these cards interesting or good or cool. So I'm going to run through a list of the ones I'm sad that didn't really get their chance. And then also, of course, I want to hear some from you as well. So number one, obviously, in no particular order, Archwitch Willow. I've tried so many times to make this card work, and it never seems to work. And then it got buffed, right? I'm not delusional. Didn't it get buffed? I searched Willow just now on Hearthstone, and it brought, or on Google, and it brought me to the movie Willow. Great movie, but not what we're looking for. Yeah, it used to be 9 mana. Can you believe it was 9 mana, and at 8 mana, it's still far too slow. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's just that we never got the right demons for this. I always thought Enhanced Dreadlord had the chance to make Willow good. I guess we just never got good demons. Like Fell Lord was kind of okay. It's too slow, right? At 8 mana, it's still not enough. Boards like this aren't good enough unless they're really big and wide. Or they come down a hair sooner. I think we saw like Baron Glacier, right? A card that was a little better. Still kind of got excluded eventually from the best list. But this got a little bit of play because it came down a little faster and it went much wider. And it was used as a follow-up for aggressive decks, or at least more aggressive decks as kind of a finisher. Whereas Willow isn't really good at achieving that so much, right? Because she's coming down a little too late to fit naturally on the end of an aggressive curve, and she's not going super wide, creating this high friction problem. She's more about stabilizing defensively, and that's just not good enough at 8 mana. There's much faster ways for Warlock to deal with aggressive problems than something like Willow. So I think she fell in the gaps from being not threatening enough, not reactive or defensive enough, maybe just not having the right set of demons to go with her. So just at 8 mana, it doesn't work. It doesn't fill any needs. And I think that's sad. I like big decks like this with big crazy threats and demons. And, you know, I like the big 8-drop Dreadguard thingies. They're cool. Dreadlords. They look awesome. Lifesteal, Taunt. That's what I want in life, but it just never came together. So what do you guys say? Her high cost and effect weren't powerful enough, especially with tiny Druid. Right. Yeah, imagine playing 8 mana taunts into aggro druids, beast druids, right? It's just way too slow. All right, so next up for me is a bit of an interesting one. I don't think people will expect this one, but Scrap Golem. Golem. I love cards like this. Armor and taunt, sign me up. And this guy always seemed pretty cool too for N'Zoth decks, Menagerie N'Zoth decks, which I played him in a lot of those. They were fun. They worked okay, but he never made it in a truly meta sense. Only fringe pet deck type scenarios with Scrap Golem viable, never in a really actual meta deck, which I think is sad because there were 2 angles for this card. We saw, well, actually kind of 3 if you count Menagerie, but he had a taunt angle, and there were a lot of taunt hand buff things that came out for Warrior in his rotation. So for instance, Feat of Strength is the perfect synergy card for Scrap Golem because you give him 5/5. Not only does he himself become bigger, but of course his armor gauge becomes bigger because you've buffed his attack. And I really wanted that taunt hand buff package to come together in a compelling way. It never did. You've also just got armor gain synergies. You get enough armor in a control deck, maybe that does something advantageous for you. Scrap Golem didn't seem worth it. Much more efficient. Cheaper ways to get immediate armor as opposed to armor that's on a delay, which is better, of course, for cards like Shield Slam. So, you know, heavy plate over Scrap Golem often makes sense if you're relying on that armor to enable removal. And then finally, Menagerie cards. And N'Zoth Warrior, you know, again, N'Zoth popped into some control warrior decks here and there, but this wasn't a compelling piece of the puzzle most of the time. So I think a really fun card. Yeah, great when randomly summoned, for instance. Cool off Reconnaissance for Rogue. It seems like when you get this, you're kind of happy that it happened, but just never quite good enough to be a centerpiece or pull that Taunt Warrior build together, the hand buff Taunt thing. This wasn't quite strong enough for all that to make sense together. So I loved this card, but just not quite there competitively, I guess. All right, speaking of 5 mana Death Rattles, This one's intriguing. Alar. I always thought Alar could be cool. Really high friction front half that's like, oh god, I can't let that live. It's such a pain. But then the back half is very low impact and threat and very easy to remove as a 0/3, particularly I think in a rush world. If you had printed this card pre-rush, where people didn't have access to such easy ways to value trade the 0/3, also just pre-hyper efficient cheap removal in Hearthstone, all the brain freezes of the world, right? I think Alar would have been nuts. I think it would have been really cool in like 2015 Hearthstone or something, right? This could have been a very powerful, super annoying card. But instead, a card that just didn't make a lot of sense. I think we played like one cool hunter deck that did something cool with this, but never, of course, a real meta piece of the puzzle. Didn't even really fit in for like elementals and menagerie decks. There were better options. I feel like in a lot of ways, Moonfang came along and satisfied the same design of Alar in a lot of ways, being this sticky, pervasive threat on board that was much harder to deal with, right? Moonfang was the same kind of stat alignment, the same sort of minion, but harder to kill. Alar was much, much easier. It's kind of a 2-part kill, and the second half isn't punishing at all. Moonfang is a 3-part kill in a lot of cases. It's based on damage or minion trades anyway, and much more awkward to deal with, I think, in most cases. So maybe Moonfang was the evolution of this in a weird way. Obviously, they work differently, but still similar in practice. Like on board, they kind of do the same sort of thing. The only Phoenix in the Year of the Phoenix. Huh. Wasn't there Imprisoned Phoenix? I don't mean to shoot down your theory. There might have been 2 Phoenixes, I guess. The card itself is really unique, like lore-wise, but unfortunately too weak in recent Hearthstone years. Yeah. I would like to go back to a Hearthstone world where this is good, though. Alar could have been cool if they did something like make the egg also have a death rattle. Like stacking it up even further. Punish you for killing the egg, so there's more friction. So anyway, I hate when legendaries like those two that we just talked about get kind of lost in the shuffle. Speaking of that, this is such a cool card. I'm really sad this never got serious play. Gahun the Blood God. Dude, what a great character, great visual. The kind of red-headed stepchild of the old god world, but still very fun and cool. But just not good enough, you know? Again, card draw at 8 mana like this, even on a body, just a little awkward. The cards having sometimes a notable punish for a deck that might want to run high-cost things. Really punishing. Hard to get a couple 8-drops off this and take 16 or something, right? It's really tough, and the swing potential is just not worth it. Again, I think it probably points towards people having way too efficient ways to deal with things. So even if you get a big swing out of this card and really pull a board back with some threats, they're probably dealt with far too easily or just ignored in favor of burst damage that you can't really risk running a card like this. It's just too punishing in too many ways. It costs too much. It's great design, but modern Hearthstone is too fast for anything even remotely slow to be good. Yeah, and it's even slow in a way that allows you to recover some tempo, but you sacrifice health, which is drastically punished in a combo OTK world where health is a incredibly valuable resource. You have to stay above certain breakpoints very often. So let's move over to a non-legendary. We've got a few legendaries, but this was a cool one. I don't remember ever getting played a lot. It's going to be an unusual choice, but Ceremonial Maul. We got a big spell burst card here where you were rewarded for playing a lot of big spells. And I guess I don't remember a lot of big spell paladin action. We saw some big spells come out, Party Up, Commencement. I think I tried to make this work in some big paladin decks, Libram of Hope even, but I can't remember any good ones coming along to really pay off the spell burst here. But I thought it would be cool to have a big spell paladin. You know, we've had big spell mages before, but I like when classes get new and distinct archetypes. I feel like too often in Hearthstone, we always keep going back to the same archetypes. It's priests that res things, and it's druids that summon a lot of small stuff, and it's warriors that have a lot of armor. You know, it's always the same stuff. I guess Paladin has technically had more diverse archetypes than most classes, but I always like new ones popping up. So I think a big spell Paladin would have been cool. The idea of a 3-mana weapon that summons you, 5/5 or 7/7 is pretty crazy. And the fact that it had taunt makes it nice and defensive as well. Also, this is a warrior card. I honestly legitimately forgot that. Literally until right now. I guess we never saw this in warrior either, really, right? Where are my big spells in traditionally minion-based classes like paladin and warrior? I want to see it. I want it to happen. I crafted 2 golden ceremonial mauls, and I was so sad when I realized it was bad. Oh, dude. That's sad. Next up. This one makes me very sad. Very sad. This might be the one that frustrates me the most on the list. Grand Totem Eyesore. This card is so cool. I freaking love this card. I want a crazy cool stat-based, board-based totem deck like this. He came out, we had some totem stuff lingering. There was a very tiny brief moment where totems were good, but not for long. And then immediately, no totem support printed for going on, what, a year now? 2 years? A year? Nothing. Nothing in the next year. Year and a half, whatever. No more totems. But look at this. Look. In the year after, this came out in Dark Moon, right? Barons. No totems. Guff Rune Totem. Stormwind. No totems. Alterac Valley. A Grim Totem. No totems. 0 totems since it came out. So I think Blizzard saw it as sort of maybe like the cap on the totem stuff, like the final one last hurrah for totems. But for me, it was more like, oh my god, we got no time to explore this card and have fun with it, you know? It came out for like 2 minutes, totems are relevant, and then it went away and we never saw it again. And that makes me sad, right? Like, the same thing actually happened with, what I can't think of her name, Urel. Same thing, right? She came out as the kind of cap on the pure paladin stuff, the final hurrah of pure paladin, which that's fine. Okay, cool, we get a nice centerpiece card, but it's for one expansion, and then all the pure stuff rotated out, and this card is left dead for the next year. She's not good enough to make you run a pure deck, so she's stranded for pure decks, and Eyesore is stranded for pure decks, or for totem decks. So they get like 5 minutes of fun, and then they're useless for the next year, which makes me really sad. I don't like that so much. I wish there were more things to follow up these kind of centerpiece star legendaries, especially because they're legendaries. So people are crafting these or opening these, and then they're not very good. They're useless after 5 minutes. So that makes me sad. So Eyesore, very, very sad to see. This was a card I would love to be good, but I can't remember it ever being good. Groundskeeper. Really nice mid-game defensive tool. I mean, when this card came out, right, I remember seeing it and thinking, like, think about how good this is compared to Sinjin Shieldmaster, a card that used to actually get played a lot, right? Shieldmaster was a meta card. It got put in real Hearthstone decks. This is just 1,000 times better, of course, like many cards before it and after it. It's power crept a million times. But it does so much! Yeti Taunt with extra healing upside. I was like, God, this is a dream card, and it's just not good enough. It's just not fast enough. And Druid has big spells too. It's not like Druid doesn't run big spells. They've run plenty of big spells. They want to spend their mana ramping. They want to spend their mana cycling through cards. They don't want to spend their mana playing mediocre minions on board for a little bit of life gain, right? So it can't outcompete. And then Shaman side of things, Shaman doesn't run as many big spells in the meta these days, right? Shaman's been much faster in the meta, so I don't think this has been as natural of a fit for Shaman as it would be for Druid. But even in Druid, where I think it fits better, still just doesn't get played. Just doesn't make sense for game plans. Really, I think it boils down to, in the modern era of Hearthstone, most decks have very directed game plans. They have something they're trying to achieve, trying to do, and they want to play cards that advance that game plan as directly and as immediately as possible. It is true, too, that cards like Fungal Fortunes and Glowfly pushed Druid into a much more spell-heavy deck. They're running very few minions most of the time, so any minion loses a little bit of efficacy in that world for sure. Yeah, Control Shaman never really came together. Shaman's been a more aggressively aligned deck for most of this card's lifespan, which makes sense when you have things like Lightning Bloom printed in the same exact expansion. You can be very aggressive and put out tons of mana very quickly and play towards the game plan very rapidly. So why do you need a card like Groundskeeper, right? I'm just going to be winning the game. Who needs this? All right, this one we've already talked about a little bit because we tried to make a deck for it recently. Deck of Chaos. This one, some of these I think, oh, they didn't get supported or the meta didn't fit them. I think this card's just really bad. It's not a lost opportunity so much from a meta standpoint or support standpoint, which a lot of these are. Like, they didn't get the support cards they needed, like Eyesore, for instance. Didn't get any totems. Of course, Eyesore's a missed opportunity. This one just needs to be like 3 mana. I don't even know if 3 mana is good enough, but I think it kind of had to be 3 mana, and I think you probably needed a couple more really standout minions that had some very specific upside to this that were printed probably in Warlock because they might be useless in neutral. But I think Batterhead was a card that kind of made sense for this. For instance, it rotated out pretty quickly after, as I recall, but more cards like that were very good. Something that said, like, it's like a 1/10 for like 4 mana or something, or maybe 5 mana, maybe like a 5 mana 1/10 that's like a Sergeant Sally effect or something, right? Or maybe it even goes face, like Death Rattle, deal this minion's attack to the enemy face, right? Something like that, so that you get this actually insane game-winning kind of payoff for Deck of Chaos. So this probably needed to be cheaper and get some kind of immediate support, because otherwise it's just not really that good. I never understood why this was 6 mana when it came out, but Lunacy was 2 mana. Yeah, I would argue Lunacy was probably even a better effect, but this costs 3 times as much. Yeah. It is strange. Oh god. Oh, he's not rotating. I was gonna say, I gotta talk about Niru. Next year, when Nero rotates, he will be the prime topic of discussion for this video, because Nero got printed and then immediately outclassed by everything Warlock got, namely the Demon Seed, right? It's outrageous how bad Nero is compared to the Demon Seed as an end-game winner. It's hilariously bad. It's absurd. Nero is the ultimate example. Okay, so I got 2 left. I'm going to go through these kind of fast. I got to go soon. Number 1 is, we talked about this a little bit in some other video, but Ancient Voidhound. Man, I wanted Big Demon Hunter to be so good, so bad. And there were varieties of Big Demon Hunter that were slightly off meta, kind of tier 3 things in some recent expansions. So Big Demon Hunter kind of got there, but Voidhound wasn't a part of that. And that makes me so sad. I love this card so much. It's exactly what I want in Hearthstone. It's big, it's amazing, the effect is unique and distinct, and it scales to get even bigger. It's hilarious if your opponent doesn't deal with it, but it's not immediately game-ending like so many late-game cards. There's still counterplay and interaction that happens when this guy hits the board. So it's everything that I love. But unfortunately, that makes it too slow. And you need taunt, you need survivability, you need immediate reactivity if you're going to summon big things. So Pit Commander made a lot more sense. It's also big stats, but it has taunt. Illidari makes more sense because, of course, this can go face for crazy burst damage. So Voidhound really kind of gets left out. It's just not really up to the snuff for modern Hearthstone, and that's sad. That's a missed opportunity because this card is so freaking cool. So missed opportunity. And then finally, one last card. I'm gonna let you guys guess what it is. What do you think it's gonna be? What's my last pick for missed opportunity cards? Can you tell us the class? Yeah, Rogue. It's Rogue. Hanar? No, Hanar got played a ton. Hanar got nerfed. Hanar was insane. Bean has it right, but it really showcases the problem. Doesn't even know the card's name. Grand Empress Shekzara is my final missed opportunity card. So forgettable that you can't even remember its name. The Dark Moon 5/7, the shuffle card. That's it. Grand Empress Shekzara. Man, I just feel like this card got nothing to make it interesting. I don't even know that there were really any good memes for this one. I think right when it came out, there was some Mogu Cultist stuff that you could do with it. If you remember Mogu Cultist summoning the big 2020 guy. But after that, so many times we looked at this and we are like, I want to make a cool deck out of this, but what do we do? There's tickets, but they weren't really very good. There's just not that many interesting things to do with it. It's just, there's like really memey stuff, like the Mogus, the Boars. That's cool, but beyond that, there's nothing. I literally didn't know that card existed. Forgot this was a card. It's just still, yeah, it just completely went away, right? Probably needed Tog Scheme to do something cool with it, but that's what I mean. Like some other card to come along and give this at least some kind of edge or unique reason to play it. I don't think we got one after this came out. Yeah, true. Expensive cards in Rogue are hard enough as it is. Garrote, you just draw naturally. You don't need this, right? There's way faster ways to draw stuff and more reliable ways in Rogue. So you can't use it for like Garrote Rogue. You just draw 10 cards instead of hoping to find the exact Garrote in your deck. Maybe they hoped Garrote was a way to enable this, but it certainly didn't work out. Those are mine. What other ones are you guys thinking of? What other rotating cards did you maybe like open in a pack and it sucked and you're sad you never got use out of it, or some kind of build around you were really excited about but never really got anywhere? Shando's a good example. Never really felt like I could do much with Shando. Even when we tried to use her as like a Keleseth, it never felt good. The copy, I think, was sometimes used for OTK stuff, but again, never really felt good. You would say in the Grand Slam, but Mage made it meta. Oh, that's an interesting example, though. It was hard for Hunter to use, at least, right? We kind of got a lot of this card because of Lunacy Mage, but as its own self, it very rarely got played. I think that's a good example. Yisiel. Oh, yeah, Yisiel. Oh, my God. How did I not include Yisiel? Yeah, I mean, I do feel like Druid got plenty of other spell discount and mana manipulation shenanigans that it didn't really feel like we needed Yisiel to be good. But it is true that she is absolutely forgotten. And it's a shame because she looks so epic. This is one of the best card arts in Hearthstone. It's really cool. But yeah, exactly. Alignment and stuff came along that made this feel like, what's the point? Mozaki got plenty of spotlight. I refuse to acknowledge this. All right, guys. I think that's going to wrap it up. I got to go here in a minute. That's a pretty good list. Pretty good list of missed opportunity cards. I think there's just something to think about here from a design standpoint of like stranding cards sometimes from a design element, like giving them a very brief window to succeed and then not supporting them for a year always makes me feel pretty bad. Because I think people open those cards in decks and then they just don't get to use them. I think that's a really unfortunate experience for players to have. So anytime we can give cards at least some angle of success, I like that a lot. Whether that's duels or standard now. You know, it's hard. There's 135 cards. Not all of them can be good, but I think even offering a little mediocrity sometimes goes a long way. So I hate when cards come out and then it feels like there's just no meta or world for them to exist. It's not even necessarily a design problem. Sometimes it's just stuff falls through the gaps. Cards never really get their moment or their meta. But it's nice to think about those and see if there's some way in the future we can shore up those weaknesses and make cards have some tiny degree of viability.